All right, boys and girls, we are back with Christopher Go, and this is going to be quite intensive because we're going to spend the next 2 hours doing the image processing side of things. We're going to look at some of the data that we had captured from yesterday. Is that correct? And you also got some new data today as well.
Yes, I got some data from Jupiter, and we have Saturn. So we're gonna process Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars today.
Excellent. All right, so save all your questions for the end of the talk because this is going to be quite intensive. Because Chris
Uh,
is the
mm. Oh,
sorry.
actually, they can ask questions anytime.
Oh,
Because
okay.
some of the stuff we're doing will be a bit boring.
Oh, a
So
lot of
basic,
waiting.
there's a lot of waiting. But I've already stacked everything. But I'll just show you. We're gonna start. We got all the data yesterday. The reason why I want to process yesterday's data was that I want to show you was the seeing wasn't perfect. It was about 6 to 7. But I think some of you who have seen me post the image on my Facebook page, uh, I'll show it to you now. Uh, we'll see that the image came out actually pretty well. So this is the how the image that we got from the data we got yesterday. It's actually pretty good. So how did I do it? Um, let's go back. Uh, so this is the data set we got yesterday. So we're just gonna process one set. Now, when we're doing uh, why are we doing DRotation? I explained earlier that DRotation is just like stacking on steroids. You'll notice that when we were capturing, we were using very high gain. So the images that we got were actually very grainy. So we're gonna start with stacking. Um, of course, I would recommend Auto Stackert. Uh, so this is how it looks like. Now, one thing nice about AutoStacker is that it can do batch processing. So for it takes quite some time to process AutoStacker. In fact, if I were to process everything now, I don't think we have enough time. Uh, so you can actually choose multiple files uh, to for your capture, and there you have the image here. Now we were talking about the size of this, what AP size, and there were some comments that what if we use AP size too small? And I actually had an accident yesterday when I was processing Mars. I actually used a very small AP size, and what happened was that after the stacking, I got a lot of artifacts. So it's not recommended to use the smallest AP size. I think Simon talked about this yesterday, right?
Right.
When you have your AP size is too small. In fact, I'll show it to you. This is a Mars image. Yeah. Okay. This is a Mars image. We're gonna use 24 AP size. Let's say this is a 70. Let's go ahead and process this.
So I mean, obviously the anchor point sizes is unique to the situation that you're actually in. It's not actually a good thing
Yeah.
for smaller objects.
Yes. It doesn't mean that if you get this the smallest, even with this one, Mars is small, but what I discovered was that what file was it? Let me check. 21, 24, 124G. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Wrong day. Um, 21, 24. There, it's more pronounced when you go here. You see this over here? This is the artifact. You can see this on this edge. And if you use a larger, in fact, because of the artifact, I had to move to the next sized 48. And if you use 48, this is what you get. So no artifact. So you can see the difference when you use an AP size that is too small, you get artifacts coming out of the image. So it's not recommended to have the smallest. As I explained earlier, you can actually do batch processing. Um, what I do is for Jupiter, I use 104. Well, it all depends on how big your Jupiter is. In my case, my scene could support higher power. So I just use 104 and just place AP on grid. I don't really do things manually here. For the seeing yesterday, I was expecting about 7/10. So I'm gonna stack about 70% of my frames. And what I do is I actually do drizzle. I do this basically to I think Anthony Wesley and I were experimenting on this, and we discovered that the alignment is better when you drizzle. And of course, if you think that the size is too big, you can always reduce anytime. So after this stack, so it will just go ahead and process everything automatically. Now, basically, this is the first step. So basically, stacking. I'm not gonna show the actual stacking because it's gonna take hours. I already have everything pre-stacked. So basically, this is the only thing you have to do. Look at this one, the planet dynamic background. Make sure you have this Laplace checked and local. Basically, when you're processing, let's say, lunar images, it's actually a different process, or even if you have a solar, which is not the whole globe. Let's say, oh, wait a sec. If you want to do lunar processing, I'm just going to show you. This is what is this? Oh, this is a solar image. Oh, is this a full globe? Let me see if I have some lunar images here. Okay. Moon. Okay. Now, this is a sample of lunar images. You cannot use planet. You have to use surface, and you have to use analyze first. So this is going to take some time. I'm just going to demo how to process lunar images, and we can go back to Planetary later on, because I think some people are asking, oh, what if you don't have a whole globe? This one, you cannot just use planet processing. You have to use surface processing. And basically, this is the procedure of how to do it.
One question here is, why are you not using multi-scale and close to edge?
Where's that?
I'm not 100% sure on the multi-scale part. I think what he's probably referring to is the older version of AutoStacker has the circle with the points that you click on it on the tick.
You don't really need that. I just let the AutoStacker decide everything. This is the latest version, and so far I found this quite quite good. Okay, we're almost done.
Someone's asking, is 1.5 drizzle the best, or are the other ones better?
I think 1.5 is more or less the best. Two times and three times is way too much, and it takes longer to process.
And then, are you stacking all the RGB files at once in comparison to using? Oh, okay, yeah. So that was the batch command, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the batch. No, the batch command is just you just pick everything, and after that you just place AP on grid. This one I would recommend 200 size.
Well, because your features are quite big in this one.
Yes. So the recommendation, as Simon and I said earlier, never use the smallest. Just test. I think I would recommend that you test your image first on different, and make sure that you get the smallest AP size without artifacts. So after this, you can actually, check how many. This is the percentage of how much you want to stack. depending on your seeing. Today, I was using 80% because the seeing was 8/10. And for this one, probably 60, 70%. Then you press stack and it will stack this image. I'm not going to stack this because this is going to take probably about 20 minutes to stack. But more or less, this is how stacking is done. It's quite simple. One thing nice about auto stacker, you have less controls, but it's quite simple, but it works. Do you have any questions with stacking? Because we're gonna go to the next important step.
What percentage of the images do you actually keep?
Well,
I mean, you have an interesting formula there based upon your seeing conditions.
Yes, I just look at the quality of my raw. If I can, I can already gauge. Well, it'll take experience. I think I would suggest that if you're doing it the first time, because I can't really judge what you have. Just do an experiment, do 50, 60, 70, 80 on different sky conditions that you have. And after about probably 2 to 3 weeks, you'll probably, have a feeling on how much you should stack. This is not something which is really written on a wall or something that is fixed. It's something that you gain through experience. Yeah, it takes time.
So then what's the difference between double stack reference and auto, and which one do you use and when?
Which one?
Reference frame.
Reference frame.
Left-hand side.
Yeah.
See what it says analyze? Yeah.
I don't. I just use auto size. I haven't really tried the double stack. I'm meeting Emil this October, so I'll try to ask him what that thing is about.
Sorry, I just realized what the question is. So let me answer that real fast. So the double stack reference is what happens here is when it creates the reference frame and every other subsequent frame is based off of that. What it does here is once it's done the one pass, it'll double check the same frame again against the frames that it was using to compare against to make sure nothing shifted. What you tend to do though for that is it helps with some of the bad seeing. So if you get a lot of rippling, I don't know if you can kind of scrub through the video here. You know, it says frames. Can you scrub through the frames so we can see the movement?
Which one? Oh, okay, this one.
Up at the top, yeah. So with the double stack reference, as you scrub through that, when you actually done the first pass, it'll do the pass again to make sure that it is relatively accurate and make any other minor adjustments according to that. Usually it's best just to set it to auto size and it'll determine it by itself. It's only when you get like hideous artifacts do you need to start messing around with the double stack reference. And it is very, very CPU intensive.
Okay. I'll try that one of these days.
Oh, you almost will never need to use it. I've played with it so many times, it's pointless. It's almost pointless. The auto does a way better job.
Okay. Yeah, I think auto size is better than double stack. I think I remember before that's the reason why I chose that. Emil also talked about that. And yeah, but make sure you use Laplace and this one. Okay. So we're done now, with stacking. Stacking is actually very simple. Oh, there's one thing that I would also recommend. I would always normal. Where was that? Oh no, not here.
Oh, before you close that, the quality graph. Can you explain how the quality graph works? A lot of people get confused with that.
So do I. I actually don't really look at that anymore because I don't. Well, I've tried to ask Torsten about this, but I never got a fixed answer. I'm gonna ask him again later this year, and yeah, we'll see. I'll make a post on what he says. But overall, I don't judge the percentage wise on the quality graph, but on my actual seeing. Because if you look at it, it doesn't really make sense.
Right.
Things go up and down. I really can't read what it means. Okay.
All right, let's move on.
So basically, when I'm processing, the first step I do is basically stack stack everything. And the next step that I do is this. Okay, let's close this one. This one, Registacks. Now, Registacks is very important because you know, you can basically, this is where your final image will really depend. This is the image we had yesterday. This is the Jupiter we had yesterday, and you have to have the right. Now it's blurry after stacking, but if you set the right, let's say this one, it looks okay. The seeing we had yesterday was a little unstable, so I have a little trick up my sleeve to improve the image, and this is this one, step increment. If you press this, look at what happens. Boom. So you got a lot better image now than here. So normally, if the seeing is good, this is the setting that I use. But in this case, since we had unstable seeing yesterday, uh, you can push it a little more, and you get a little more detail. And if you notice the images that we got yesterday, it wasn't really perfect. Look at the green; it's blurry. Uh, it's not that great. So basically, I just went ahead, just apply wavelets, and once you do the wavelets, what I would do is add the letter W. This is the file name. Make sure that when you capture, you use the WinJupos option, and you just place W here and save. So you can distinguish between the original image and the image that you applied the wavelets. And if you look at even the blue is horrible. It's nothing there. So basically, you would apply the wavelets on all the image that you have. After that, you would go here. You do the RGB. In this case, I'll just do a sample for today's image because I really have to process these. This is the image I captured today, and it's still not great, but a lot better than yesterday. So this is what you do. First thing, after you apply the wavelets, you will notice that the images are RGB, not grayscale. So the first thing we do is to convert everything to grayscale. Then you go here, merge channels, then the RGB color. Okay. Then what you do when you open the file on Photoshop, make sure you click blue, green, and red. Why? Because so that when you the channels will align perfectly here, so you get the perfect color. If you do things in reverse, the green and the green and the blue will go reverse. No, the red and the blue will go reverse. I don't know why this is the case, but somehow this is the situation. And what you do is you press this button here to move and just go to each channels. So what you do here, you would align the red to the green. So you would align all the red to the green and the blue to the green. So the green will be fixed on all images. And you'll understand why later on when we do DRotation. So red, you just align, use the arrow keys to align a little more here. Yeah, this is a tedious, but yeah, it it looks tedious, but it works for me. So we have another green, and open the last. So what I did was that for the seeing that we had today, I took 7 sets of image. Actually, I would normally do 6, but I just wanted a little insurance. So I had to reject one of the image because it was blurry. I think the seeing was bad during that time. So, okay, we're done. Save. Okay. So we did stacking. We did the stacking first. We applied the wavelets, and we RGB aligned the color image. Now we go to WinJupose. Oh, I have WinJupose here. So the first thing you do, make sure you have the right planet. It's Jupiter. I always go crazy sometimes because when you're doing multiple planets, I forget which planet we are. Then we go to recording, image measurements, then open. Let's go here. We're now processing actually today's image, not yesterday's image. I'm just going to show you how things are done. So this is the first image that I had today. So what do you do? In Jupiter, there's actually a secret formula. You press F11, the F11 key, and voila. It aligns the wireframe into Jupiter. This only works with Jupiter, unfortunately. It doesn't work with Mars. More or less, this is aligned. You just have to look at um, the belts here to make sure that yeah, it's more or less aligned. This one is more or less, yeah, good. If you need to adjust, all you have to do is to use the arrow keys, and to rotate this thing, you have to press N. This is what happens when you press N. It goes clockwise, and P, it goes counterclockwise. And if you want to make it big or small, you just page up, page down. So page up and page down. So this is how you adjust. Later on, when we're doing Saturn, when we're doing things manually, you'll see how this will be done. But for now, let's just go F11. I'm happy with it. What you do is save the image measurement. Then next, you open the next one. Now, one thing nice is that if you had followed my instruction earlier, first of all, when you use auto stacker, it automatically aligns all the image to the center. When you do align, the RGB align, if you align everything to green, so more or less everything will be the same. So all you have to do, you don't have to readjust everything. You all just open, save, and this one, open, save. Then okay, this one, save, and this one, almost done. So you open and everything, you have all your image measurement. It's simple, right? DRotation, this is it. It's quite easy. Okay, so there we have it. We have already done image alignment. So now we do the DRotation. This is the DRotation. I go to Tools. I'll show you it again. Tools, DRotate images. Now there's a lot. There's an option here for DRotation of video streams. Forget about that. It's not worth it. It's just time consuming. Just do this one. So here we are. So you go to Edit, Add. Okay, this is not the one. This is yesterday's images. And here, Jupiter. Okay, you'd select everything. Oh yeah, I forgot something. Cancel. This is a step that you have to do. Look at here. There's an LD value here. Please place 0.65. Why? If you don't, this is a limb darkening. If you don't place, it's actually the value is about 0.65 to 0.75. If you don't do this, what's going to happen is that sometimes when you do DRotation, the edge would brighten up. If you have that bright edge artifact, do this. Do this on all images. There will be no bright edge artifact. Okay, DRotation. Now, what I would love to do is just place F here for the final image, so that I will not, sometimes it's difficult to find the file. Then compile image. That's it. So that's DRotation. Simple, huh? Any questions, guys?
There's actually quite a few different questions happening here. Let me just start with, let's pick one. This is talk about Registax. Okay, so this is talk about Registax. In Registax, Gaussian blur gives you a finer, oh no. Oh, it is a question, sorry. In Registax, Gaussian gives you finer control, sharpen and denoise filters. Why are you not using these?
I have other tools. This is what I'm comfortable with. If you get good, the wavelet settings is really up to you. There's nothing firm about it. I just work with what I'm happy with. Some people have different settings than mine. In my case, this is what I'm happy with, and basically, it worked for me. If it works for you, then you keep it. You just have to play and discover what there's processing, especially when you're using these settings. It all depends on your setup, your telescope, and what you're used to. This one is what I'm used to. I've tried Gaussian before, and I find this workflow that I'm using good, and I'm happy with it. And yeah, that's basically it. So this is the derotated image. You'll notice, compare it with a single image here. You can see it has less noise. It's smoother. We can post-process this, and you'll see some magic now. So where was that? Here's the image. Now what I normally do, because there's some lines here, I first remove the lines. Okay. Okay. Then I normally reduce the image size by 90%. Depends on seeing. If seeing is good, I would even use 100%. But if seeing is bad, I would go as low as 60%. And I think this needs a little color adjustment. Look, the blue is blurry right now, but after my magic, now what do we do here? This is the first secret that I have. You go to noise, you use the speckle function. Why the speckle? The speckle, I call it a rug that you use to place on an object when you hit it with a hammer. So basically what the speckle does is it basically, when you apply sharpening, it reduces the grain. Now, I will show you. This is the sharpening. We have a nick collection here. Look at this one. This is the first sharpening that we do. Now, I'm going to show you the difference between using this sharpening and without the speckle. If you use this one without the speckle, this is what happens. You can see the image is very, very grainy compared to the image we had earlier. While if you have the speckle, it's much smoother, cleaner, and you'll notice a lot of low resolution spots here. You can see in the north temperate zone on Jupiter. And what I do here is this is a sheet that I use. This is a Topaz Labs denoise, and boom, the grain's gone. And you look at the blue and the green. Oh wow, it's nice now. If you compare it with the original one, and the one, even this one, okay, this one, you compare this with this, night and day. And the blue, this is the original one, and this is a sharpened one. So there you have it. So you'll see the difference between the two. This is the
George Hall just said, what kind of sharpening did you select? He missed that part.
I use a software called Nick Collection. I use the output sharpener. Now, Nick Collection has an interesting history. It used to be an independent software which sold, I think, $300. Then Google bought it and gave it away for free. Then I think Google got all the patents and got tired of it and sold it to a company called DxO. This is, you can still actually download the free version, but it only works on old versions of Photoshop. For newer versions of Photoshop, you may have to pay to get DxO. I find this to be a very good sharpening tool. And wait a sec. And basically, this is the settings that I use over here. So I have different settings for hard, for perfect seeing, and just average good seeing. So these are the settings that I use. It might not work for you. You can test it. Again, most of these settings, it's all trial and error. There's no fixed thing like, one setting that works for everyone. It all depends on your seeing, your transparency, your telescope, your camera, everything. You have to you have to discover your own sweet spot.
Well, what I would recommend to a lot of users at home is if you're following along with this, is take a look at some of Chris's settings, apply that setting, and then start playing with it afterwards. Because again, the setting was unique to his situation at that particular time. But if you're looking for a base point, it's always a good time, or sorry, a good way to start something, and then go back, make those minor adjustments just to be able to tweak it. It's always down to your liking more than anything else.
Yes, that's true. And okay, we'll go to the other images. Um, IR, I only have to adjust a little bit. Okay. One. Okay. So this is my daily workflow when I'm working. Oh, sorry. Oh.
So while you're doing this, what exactly is derotation doing?
DRotation, what it actually does is, when Jupiter rotates, it moves, the features. It will keep the features on. It will stack the images at its, at its actual central or position. So it basically locks in the latitude. I think what they do is actually, I'm not sure the process that the programmer is using, but basically what how it's working is that it basically aligns. Example, this spot would move to here. It'll basically be with the, well, you didn't see anything. You didn't see me input the date and the time here because if you had kept the WinDupo settings, it will get the feedback of the date and time automatically. You can see it here. There's a date and time. So when you open the file, it will basically register the date and time. So it knows when you took the image. So it knows how to align it. You know how long it knows how long it moved to the second image. And the reason why I didn't input it is because I told you earlier, when you do your capture, make sure in file capture that you have that, you check that option of using the WinDupo's file naming convention. Oh, well, I forgot this. Okay. After this, we're going to do the methane band. The methane band, one thing we talked earlier that I don't really like to change the position of the camera once I'm imaging. And this is the reason, because when you're derotating, and if you you want to everything processed fast, you want to keep the camera position the same. So you don't have to. All you have to do is to open the file and save, open, save, open, save. It saves a lot of time. So this is the methane band. Now I have to do things manually here because F11 doesn't work here.
So while you're doing that, quick question here. LD value, LD value is at 0.65. Is that only applicable for Jupiter, or is that across the board?
Everything across the board.
So it doesn't matter if it was
Saturn,
anything. You would always do 0.65.
yeah. Actually, it's 0.55 to 0.75. So you'll have to find out which value will work. In my case, the 0.65 works. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Save. Methane band.
Do you think that recording longer than 30 seconds will reduce the quality of the final image?
Well, 30 seconds depends on your telescope. First of all, I think Anthony usually captures up to 1 minute. So in my case, I just keep everything in 30 seconds, and it worked well for me. That is for the C14. If you have a C11, I would recommend that you use 45 seconds and 1 minute for a C8.
So essentially what you're saying here is the smaller the scope, go longer.
I think it's the focal length more than anything.
Oh, but, right. Okay. Yeah. The focal length. Sorry.
Yeah. But the methane band, I'm even using 2 minutes here because I use 2x2 binning. So you can see the difference between this image, the re-rotated image, and the original single grainy image. It's like night and day. It's a huge difference in the look. So we're still gonna final process that. Basically, we're done with Jupiter. I just want to show you the image that we had yesterday. And to give you an idea, I think you saw earlier that the image we had yesterday, it wasn't great. But where was that? Jupiter. Okay. So this is the image. One thing about this image is that we had a very good red, but the green and the blue are really mushy. Again, this is the magic of the we'll just go straight because I already processed this yesterday. This is the magic of the Nick collection. So, okay, noise, the speckle, filter, Nick. Then you apply the hammer, the hard. And okay. There you have it. And if you look at difference, especially on the blue, look at the blue. This is the original one and the new one. Magic, huh? You can really see the difference on how much data was being pulled out by the Nick collection. Even the green, look at the green. From that to that. And the final image. So that's it, guys.
So let's, do you want to do from start to end, doing the stacking, but go through it slowly? A lot of people are asking for you to go slower so they can see the exact process, because a lot of people are new to the software. Okay. So, well, I know me and you know how to use this program, but they don't.
Yeah, stacking is just this one. You just select the files. Let's say this one, the 3 of these. And what I do is this one, 70%. This was what the seeing was yesterday. Stack AP. Make sure you have all these settings here. This one will depend on your seeing. So this one was a judgment call for me. And just basically press stack. That's it. The stacking is actually very simple. The next step is basically, there's really nothing to watch with stacking, because once you press this, it will just go through everything. This is how stacking goes. But the important thing is you have all these settings, and you press this AP on grid, place AP on grid. Make sure you have the right AP size. That's it. That's how stacking works.
Yeah, I think I'm going to mention to a lot of people is don't
Mm,
overcomplicate the stacking part of it,
mm,
because all you're really doing is just overlaying the images on top of each other in order to create a better signal to noise ratio. A lot of people have a tendency to over analyze and drill into too many much of the settings, which really doesn't give much more benefit other
yes,
than what
that's
the
true.
default settings are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I have to let you know that when I'm doing processing, I keep things simple. I don't really try to I know some imagers that have all the time, that are retired, that they have time to run the video on Ninox. There's actually there's a software that pre-selects the images, uh, run even some minor tweakings to get the best image. Honestly, I don't have that much time. I have to go to work right now. I'm okay. We have a 1 month weekend here, but normally I only have about 1 hour to get everything done, processing done before I have to go to work, help the kids get ready, get on with my life, or else my wife would not be happy with me. So I have a day job. So I try to keep things simple. I don't overcomplicate things. That's why I know some people they use Gaussian. In my case, I spent time experimenting of what works with my setup. Uh, and once I find something that I'm happy with, I stick with it. And basically, that's what I work with. As Simon said, I don't tend to overcomplicate things. If there's a new software that sharpens, which removes noise, I test it out. Spend probably two days, 3 days finding the correct settings, and when I'm happy with it, I just stick with it and just go on with my day. Yeah.
Just
Mm,
Joe is mentioning that YouTube doesn't quite catch up with some of the things that you're doing. This is not really a question for you, Chris.
mm,
Joe, just so you understand,
mm, mm,
YouTube has a very, very high compression rate, which is
mm,
why it takes a moment for it to catch up. I do understand that. Of course,
mm,
when we go to replay this video later,
mm,
that compression problem won't be an issue. So of course, this isn't just a live session and it's never going to come back. I will put all of the videos that we have done throughout the weekend
mm,
up individually so you can watch the pieces as they come through. And all you got to do is just stick it in 1080 mode and you should be fine. Because I think right now YouTube is throttling everybody down, whether we like it or not. But I am pushing the stream out as high as I can possibly go before it oversaturates my internet, which is why
mm.
we're able to do this. But the final recording for you guys, when you do the replay, is shouldn't have any problems, and it should be pretty damn good. But so he does actually have a good question though. Do you have a way to rescue a video when the planetary momentarily moves out of the region of interest? And is there actually a way to save it, for lack of a better description?
I actually, in my case, I just retake the video. You can use a software called what software was that? Let me check. It's on my other laptop. VirtualDub. Yeah, VirtualDub. You can use that VirtualDub to basically do surgery on your video. It takes some time to do it. I haven't even tried doing it, but I think that could be a solution. Use VirtualDub just to cut that region.
How many hard drives of data do you actually have?
Uh, Data, I don't have hard drive. Oh, let me show you.
Oh boy. Trust me, he's got a lot of stuff floating around there.
So this is a cake of 100 Blu-ray, 50 gig Blu-rays. This is a cake of 150 Blu-rays. No, 100 Blu-rays, 50 gig Blu-rays. Uh, I have about, I think, 10 of these. So I have I have everything from 2004, 2003, 2004.
Okay, let's go back into AutoStacker. A couple of people are asking about the wavelet filter. Oh, we can close this.
Hmm.
So a couple of people are asking about the wavelet filters, default Gaussian, dietic and linear. What is the differences between those? I know you have a specific setup
Hmm. Hmm.
and I have a specific setup for the way I do stuff, but that's only based upon what I do.
Yeah. Well, you really have to test it. You know, as I said, this is like black magic. Uh, you have to basically test uh, these settings on what works for you. I cannot really tell you what you should use. Just go ahead and test it and see what works for you.
So
Um, mm,
let's show them the differences between some of the settings so they get an idea, because obviously there's no way for us to compare against one setting versus another, but let's just show them real quick.
okay. What was that? Okay. Let me. Okay. Let's see if I use Diatic. I think this is. That's what happens. Gaussian, I think it's going to be over. Yeah. But I think you have to reduce the settings. It's really yeah. I've seen some good imagers using Gaussian, and they have their good images. In my case, I'm happy with what I have, and I'm happy with my result. It's really, yeah. Even with these settings, I don't think this will work with what you have. So in fact. This wasn't my original setting. I actually discovered this setting when I saw the settings of Anthony Wesley. And when I tried to get to his setting, it didn't work for me. But along the way, I found this, and I said, "Oh, this is a good setting." So you know, to each his own. I mean, you have it's. I understand that a lot of people, they want everything pre-baked, everything automatic. Uh, you know, in real life, nothing works that way.
So
Uh,
I'm just going to show, I'm just going to control your machine real fast. I'm
mm,
just going to show everybody what some of these sliders do,
mm,
because that's always one of the fun things that people always ask
mm,
about. So
mm,
the 6 sliders that you see here, 1 through to 6, actually tells you what part or the size of the pixel that it's going to manipulate. So
yes.
I'm just going to default this back down to 1 for just a second, and I'm just going to show you guys a quick thing here, or just at least get it close to 1 as possible. When you actually click on these numbers, it actually shows you what part of the image that it actually changes. And as you can see, the further up I go to the number 1, the smaller or the finer the detail that it's actually manipulating. Now, the idea here is you're not trying to increase the noise by doing this. So this is why some people have always preferred to use the Gaussian method, because I can modify how much blur or how much detail goes through. So with the way Chris's method is by using the default method, it works out the best scenario. So all you're doing is manipulating the sliders depending on the situation. Now, of course, there is such a thing as overdoing the actual settings, because if I push it too hard, because the default is everybody wants to play with the fine details, is you kind of defeated why we stacked in the first place. Because when we're pushing it too hard, we're bringing the noise back into the image, which is what results in that noisy look. So it is, again, it's a happy medium to work in between which one's the best versus one or the other. And it's always a good thing to have presets. And this is what Chris does a lot of the times, is he has predetermined settings that he has. He'll go and check through each one to see which one gives the best result, sees that one and go, okay, that one works pretty damn good. I'm just going to play around with it. So as you can see, some of his defaults
Mm.
didn't really work. Where is that test one? I lost it. There it is.
Yeah.
So after a lot of messing around, he was able to determine this particular setting actually produced the best results for his particular purpose. And again, you have to just double check, hold down on this button here to just see what part of the image it's actually manipulating before you go ahead and make any changes. And a lot of the times, most people won't play with the last three settings just purely because it can be a little bit too heavy-handed, and I'll just demonstrate that by just doing that. Yes, you'll turn around and say, oh, this looks better, but it actually isn't, because all it's done is made those bigger areas darker, and we lose all the finer details.
One other thing that a lot of people say they're good using the Gaussian to reduce the noise. Actually, we already have a way. Rather than blurring it, we use DRotation to reduce the noise. And I like to use the Topaz Labs denoise because it's a non-destructive noise reduction.
Yes, that's right.
So I do all the denoise noise reduction afterwards. Hey, let's finish Saturn because I haven't really finished processing on Saturn. So this is gonna be this is my first Saturn image for the year. So all of you will see it at the same time as I do. So so what I did with Saturn, one problem with Saturn, it's dimmer than Jupiter and it's very low surface brightness. In fact, gain-wise, remember I told you not to use over 400 gain? For R and G, I use actually gain of 460. And for blue, I actually use a gain of 510. So so this is the images that I'm having. This is a single image. So we're actually doing the, I'm actually doing the real-time processing now. Okay. That's not bad. It's grainy, but just imagine once we derotate the hell out of this. Okay, no. So this might quit. If you have any questions, while I'm working on this, I'll try to answer them with half of my brain. Oh, shoot. Simon, do you have any questions? Are there any questions as I process these?
Well, I think we're going to cover that in just a moment. That's the funny thing. But somebody's asking about the dark subtraction with the methane channel. So I know we're going to cover that in just a moment, but he's just asking about it.
Oh, okay. Wait a sec. I'll finish this.
Yeah, we'll cover that in a second. We did actually plan for that. So
okay.
Just hold on 1 second, guys.
This is one thing I forgot. So when you stack a methane band, okay, this is the methane band. You use 48. Now, actually, I took a dark frame. I think you remember yesterday we had a dark frame. So what I did with the dark frame, this is the video of the dark frame. I think, yeah, this is the video. Oh, no, sorry. I have to close this. No. So the first thing you do is, since the dark frame we have is a video, we have to stack it. So this is the dark frame. So what you do is, oh, sorry. Okay, this is the video of the dark frame. You do this in Registax, okay? You basically stack without any alignment. So none, limit, stack, save. Okay. So you're saving this.
So, sorry, slow that down because that was a little too quick for us.
Okay. So you open, this is the video, okay? So you press none here, alignment method, none. You see it? None, then limit, then stack, then save. That's it. So you're basically stacking the dark frame. You got it?
Yep.
So it's really simple. Then here you'll notice you can see these dark here hot pixels here. Actually, somebody asked me, why don't you just stack it? If I just stack it, these hot pixels will form a grid line. So it's going to look terrible. So what you do is so you go to image calibration, low dark, and where was that? Here. And all the dark pixels are gone. And you just stack. That's it. Does that answer the question for the dark frame?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a good alternative to Photoshop? Because obviously with Photoshop, you have to pay for it by today's subscription method. Is there other programs that you can suggest?
I'm sorry, but this is what I'm used to. There might be other programs that does this, and but I'm used to Photoshop. So
One program that I can suggest to you guys that is free, it's very, very similar to Photoshop and it is free. It's a program called GIMP, GIMP. It's very, very different. So you have to understand that the flow and the workflow of that software is not the same. All the functions are there. It's just done differently, for lack of a better description.
mm,
How did you first get hooked into imaging?
actually, I started imaging in the 1986. So I had a film camera. So I started imaging starscapes with film. Yeah, that was yeah 86, 87, those years. That's how I got into amateur astronomy. Is I started with binoculars and a camera. I got my first telescope in the year 1990. It was an 8-inch Meade LX5. So that's how it all started. I think during that time it was the 86 Halley's Comet what got me started in astronomy. And for planetary imaging, I started imaging in 2003 during it was the Great Mars Opposition, where I think during that time Mars was closest in 28,000 years. Although, now I realize that it wasn't really a big deal because the usual perihelic opposition, it's just a few tenths of an arc seconds difference compared to that. But, it was where I started. I started with a ToUcam, and yeah, uh, it was a good thing. A lot of imagers helped me uh, in getting this started. I like to make a special mention with a friend of mine in Singapore who's celebrating his birthday today, uh, Wei Leong Tan. He was one of the first guys, and with Eric Nang in Hong Kong, and Damien Peach and Dominic Derrick, who helped me out. And it was then that I realized that when I started imaging with a ToUcam, that my location was actually one of the best locations to do planetary imaging. So that's how it got started. I started with an 8. Actually, I started with a 5-inch refractor, astrophysics, 130. Then once I found out that my C8 was getting better images, so I basically moved to the C8, then upgraded to a C11, then finally now a C14. Okay, where are we? Almost done. We're
So
getting there.
Normalizing an image during the stacking process, I noticed that you just had a preset for across the board. I mean, do you actually go back into each individual channel and adjust the levels, or do you let it get predetermined and not worry about it?
Actually, I do that during final processing. Once everything is derotated, because the reason why I normalize is so it's easier for me to do the RGB align. Because if the image is way too dim, it's difficult to align the RGB. Okay. Now, if you notice, the blue here is getting brighter, so I have to slowly darken the background here, so I won't get a lot of artifacts when I'm doing derotation. Okay.
So basically, what you're saying here is you prefer to actually do the quote unquote the normalization after everything is actually done.
Yes, no, it takes some time to do it individually, but if you have about 6 to 10 RGB, even if one is too blue and the other is too red, it's gonna basically normalize anyway when you derotate. Okay, we're on our last two images. Sorry, this
It's
is
okay.
how Saturn is done.
Yeah, no, that's
Uh,
fine. We're getting some great questions here. Do you
mm,
take flats with planetary imaging, or is the image size small enough where flats are not necessary?
Flats are not necessary. You might need to take flats if you have dust, and this is the reason why I got the QHY camera. I don't have to worry about dust. They have a very nice sealed system that you don't have to worry about dust. Okay.
What makes your location better for planetary imaging? I think what he's referring to is the Philippines better for imaging, or are there other areas in the world that are better than where you are? I mean, obviously, the higher up we get, the difference is obviously night and day.
Actually, the best place to image is on an island, small island close to the equator.
And why is that?
First of all, when you're close to the equator, then most of the planets are high in the sky, whether it's up north or out in the south. So in my case, even though it's low in the sky, it's still much better than uh, um, what you have there. And the second thing is that, and this is the most important thing, is that in the equator there is no jet stream. There is
So,
no jet stream on the equator.
so for those of you who are not familiar with the jet stream, you can actually look at the weather predictions and the current jet stream maps. And what you're trying to avoid here is these great big blobs that run right over your head. And then they have the arrows to point at and show where the wind speed and the wind direction is going in. Generally
Um, uh,
speaking, go ahead.
I'll show the website later. What happened here?
Oh yeah, we can show the website later. There's one. I
Uh,
mean, everybody has a different website that they use.
yeah, yeah.
A lot of the times, what I've done here is people will say to me, "Oh my God, it's a perfect sky outside. It's nice and blue because we're doing solar image, or they're out doing nighttime stuff." And they're saying, "Are you imaging?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. It's I can see there's a jet stream, and there's no point."
That's true. I have the website in one of my presentations. I'll show it. I'll show it in. We'll move to my laptop. Let me finish this because we're almost done.
Yep.
This is gonna be very nice. Oh, by the way, you'll notice it's the background is getting brighter. It was because of daylight. Uh, I was imaging close to daylight here, or sunrise. It was just a few minutes before sunrise. So, oh, things are so grainy. So, okay. Oh,
Now, I've noticed that you don't actually do a lot of filtering at this stage. You always do it at the end. I know you like to experiment. Have you tried doing the denoising first and
uh,
then do the derotation, or does that actually create a worse result?
you're just wasting time. You're just wasting time. If you're gonna do it individually, it's gonna take a long time. I don't have time for that. Basically, that's yeah. I don't have time for that. So that's the reason why, and I think it's also what's the point of denoising now when during derotation, you know, everything gets smooth. So, oh, by the way, what when you save, I forgot to tell you this one. You might have noticed when I save, I get the green and change it to color. Again, this is because of the rotation. So what is the green? The green has the mid time. When you were capturing RGB, one thing nice about fire capture is when it saves, it doesn't actually save the file at the start point time, but at the midpoint time. It will actually calculate the midpoint time, and as soon as the exposure stops, it will save the file at the midpoint time. So when you save the color, when you're doing the RGB, you save it using the green because it has the time of the green. Okay. And that's also the reason why we use fire capture. So okay, we're done with Saturn now. Okay, we move to Saturn. So we go for the recording, and okay. Where are we? Here we are. Hi, Saturn. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna place the wireframe around Saturn. This time you don't have an F11 to save us, so we have to do this manually. So sorry. What the heck happened? Sorry. What the heck happened? Okay, I made a mistake. Why the heck did it rotate? Okay, rotation. Sorry about that. I pressed the wrong button. 0. What the heck? Why can't I? Wait, something's wrong here. Anyway, we'll just
close the program down and just open it up again. It should revert back to it without you having this project saved. It'll go back to what it should have been.
Okay, let's.
Yeah, just shut down WinJuPost completely. There we go.
Let's see. I hope so. No, it doesn't.
Have you actually reset the image out so it doesn't load back the original file?
Reset all. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Sorry about that glitch. Okay. So N. Okay. Saturn is easy because you only have to align the Cassini division. So, okay. And the ring. I think we're almost there. Yeah, that's it. So you do things manually. So what you do is you use page up, page down to increase the size. The N and P to rotate. N goes clockwise, P goes counterclockwise, and the arrow keys to adjust. So basically, we have aligned the wireframe with the object. So
hold on a second, Chris. Hold on a second, Chris. We haven't set the LD yet because we reset everything.
Okay, sorry. Oh, okay. Thanks for catching that.
Yeah, no, I do the same thing when I panic. I just hit the reset button, then I forget all the other settings.
Okay, I should remember when we're doing Saturn later, Jupiter, Mars, and Jupiter later on. Okay, save. So one thing nice is that you don't have to realign everything. Everything's the same. So all you have to do is to open, save, open, save. Where were we? This one. 113. 116. By the way, guys, we're actually live processing this one. I haven't seen the actual image. This is my first image of Saturn this year, so I'm very excited because right now there's a couple of polar storms that my friend in Australia, Andy Casey, discovered a few days ago. So there you have it. Okay. Now I'm excited now. I wasn't able to do an IR today because of sunrise. So I just made sure that I have enough color image. So here we go. So like you, this will be the first time I'll be able to see this image. Oh, wow. Woo, look at that.
Oh yeah, you can see the hexagon at the top.
Yes. Let's go to Photoshop. Ooh. And where was that? F. Where are you? Where are you? Where was that?
Oh, I missed it. I was looking at the chat at that moment.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Gregory, in answer to your WinDupost tutorial, there is actually quite a few people out there on YouTube that have really in-depth tutorials on WinDupost. Chris's method is what actually suits his particular way of doing things. So I understand that he is going through this pretty fast, but it's kind of like asking somebody to do, I don't know, bread making in slow motion. Even though he knows the steps, it's very hard to slow it down once you're used to a particular workflow. I'm trying to think of the person that does a lot of these tutorials. I can hear his voice in my head. That's the funny thing. But if you do a search for it, it's an older gentleman, and his step-by-step tutorial works incredibly well. It can get very, very complicated because with what Chris is doing seems like he's just pressing buttons. Again, one of the biggest things that I can never stress anymore to anybody is do not overcomplicate what it is that you're actually doing. It's best to understand, learn the software, but at the same time, find a workflow that works for you. And I've watched Chris work before. It will take me probably 10 times the amount of time he does it if I was trying to do it. But when Chris does it, it's like lightning. He's been doing this for such a long time. So you can only imagine how much effort he's put into this to get to the point of where he's currently at.
Wait a sec. I think I'm the reset button really confused me.
Yeah, no, it really reset everything for you.
It's saved on PNG, so I was wondering why the heck is it gone? So here it is now. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. Okay, here it is. So here we go. Look, you can see the hexagon there.
Yeah, I can totally see it.
Yeah. But once we do the adjustments, this is gonna be even nicer. Okay. We do the sharpening. So what do we have here? Yeah, you can get the hint of the polar hexagon. We have to increase the blue a little bit.
So this is where you do the normalization almost.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's a little too much blue. So this is where I would adjust the colors.
Do you ever change the saturation of the image, like boost up the colors and things like that?
Not always. Not always. Noise, speckle, filter noise. I'm just reducing the noise using the speckle and dust and scratches to make the image smooth. I don't see any white spots or low contrast storms right now from the image, but you can clearly see the hexagon, which is very clear on the red. You can see the hexagon there. This is very prominent in infrared. But if you look at the bands of Saturn, it's really fantastic. You can see some yeah, more or less it's a quiet point of Saturn, but you can see the contrast of the belts of Saturn. I may have to readjust this one to make it the rings go white.
Now, are you doing this subjectively, or is it because, again, I know you've worked on NASA data here, but are you doing this subjectively, or are you going off of what you know the true colors to be? Because some people would say that colors are subjective.
Uh, you know, people are always saying they're using NASA reference color. Which color? First of all, if you talk about Hubble Space Telescope, the colors of Hubble Space Telescopes are all false color. Even the colors of Jupiter and Saturn, I processed them. They are all taken using narrow band filters. So they're not true color. In fact, the last Jupiter that was Jupiter and Saturn that was basically they had released last year. They were not RGB, but RGUV or RG, not B as in boy, but V as in violet. So as you said, colors are very subjective. There's no such. There are. I would say probably the only way you can get true color is probably using a color cam. But even then, because of the RR, the Bayer conversion, you're not really very sure.
So somebody was asking, is it possible for you to demonstrate the DRotation using a video stream? I know you have some old one-shot color video footage somewhere in your collection of stuff. They just want to see what the difference is compared to just doing as in monochrome imaging.
Because first of all, for the color that I was using, I only took 30 seconds, so there's no point in derotating that thing.
Oh, but just show the workflow. He just wants to see what the difference is.
Let me check where I placed that file. No. Because I have it on my laptop, not here. No, I don't have it.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, that's right. We were looking at your laptop yesterday.
Yeah. So basically, this is what that Saturn we have today. This is the difference of Saturn with the final processing. I might still have to adjust later on, but you can see a hint of the inky division on the edges. This still needs a little more processing. I'll probably do it later on. I'll just save this.
Can you just demonstrate it, just how to set it up at the very least? Because there is somebody who genuinely wants to see this.
The color?
Yeah, just pretend. We'll just use black and white for now, just so they see what the process is. I know you don't use it that frequently, but the guy wants to see it.
Which one? Was it on stacking or?
No, DRotation in WinJupos.
Video stream. This
yes,
one,
the video stream one, correct.
Actually, this is really useless. There's no point in using it. I don't know why you want to use it. In fact, I've talked to a lot of imagers, Damien Peach, Anthony Wesley. These guys, they don't use this. That's why you do RGB, 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 or you cut. because example, if you're there's another problem. Um, let's say you're going to capture a color camera, you're going to capture 30 minutes of data. How are you going to process that? That's a very huge file. In fact, in my case, for a monochrome, one channel is already 1 gig. If you go color, you go times 3, that's 3 gig. Let's say, how long are you going to capture? About 5 minutes. So 3 times 5, that's 15 gig. A lot of the software like AutoStacker, it might choke with that, with such a huge file. I don't think it's practical doing it. You might want to try it, but I don't think in my case, you know, I'm just doing a 30-second capture, and example, I don't know what to do with this one. Example, in this one, it won't even allow me to do derotate because of the time scale. It's only 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So in other words, you actually have to have a certain time scale before you can even attempt to derotate, because I mean, 5 minutes is hardly, well, sorry, 30 seconds is hardly any movement by comparison.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Greg, we can't show it to you through this because I don't think he's got the data necessary to be able to do this. Again, if you do a Google search, I think somebody just listed his name. I saw it. It was Steve something. He does, again, he will do the same thing. He doesn't actually really use that function of it either, because of the way we do this. That's why we rely on AutoStacker, pull all the files in, and then we have the series that we've created that we then go into derotation. We're not trying to avoid the question here. It's just it's a workflow that most of us don't use any longer. I'm not even sure why they had that in the first place, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's also a waste of time. I mean, in my case, I really don't have time to do that, and that's why it's just faster to cut it in pieces and do the re-rotation on each images. Then, and besides, when you're doing RGB stream, you cannot really have a long red, a long green, and a long blue, because what's going to happen is once you merge everything, you'll have one side red and one side blue.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was actually another issue that a lot of us came across when we were doing planets is if you spend, say, a minute on the red channel, by the time you get to, the next color along or the last color in the chain, so let's just say we do LRGB, I shoot red, green, blue, then I shoot luminance last. And then what I find here is by the time I've gotten there, I'm 4 minutes in, rotation has occurred, and when I try to realign everything from the previous stacks, I get this horrible smearing. It's almost like the color channels are misaligned, but it really isn't. The channels are realigned. It's just you've got more data on one side and less on the other.
Actually, you can actually fix that by derotating each channel, but again, that's another additional workflow.
What right? It's another added thing.
Which overcomplicates things. Oh, I want to show you one last thing. The derotation of Mars, and I have to say this is the most difficult planet to derotate.
Okay, so Chris, go slowly with this one, okay? Because again, I want to make sure people catch this.
Yeah, this is the most complicated because remember Jupiter, all you have to do is to press F11.
F11.
And for Saturn, you have the rings to work on. But with Mars, let's say here we go in Mars. Okay, there's Mars.
Oh boy.
How are you? So there's actually a trick, and here we go. This is actually a cheat. So
what was that you just clicked on to show the map?
With additional graphics. Draw outline frame and with additional graphics. You see it here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so these are the choices, but I just use that one. Now you see these two things over here. This is Olympus Mons, and this is Mons Ascrius, I think. And we have the cloud of Olympus Mons over there. Okay. So it's crazy, but I'm aligning this on Olympus Mons.
We got to make sure we reset all your workflow because LD went back to 1 again.
Yes, 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 I know. Yeah, remind me with Jupiter on this one. Okay. So this is how you do it with Mars. It's a bit complicated. More or less, yeah. You have Elysium over there. You can see the two volcanoes here. This is Olympus Mons and Mons Asclepius. More. Yeah. More or less, yeah. That should be it. It's not really an exact science. As I said, Mars is difficult to align, and from there you can save and basically derotate from here. I was able to get the files here. Mars. Oh. PNG. Diff. So this is what Mars looks like after the rotation. You can see the clouds over the two volcanoes. This is actually the Tharsis volcanic region. This should open up in the next couple of days. This should move to the face of Mars. But it's incredible. Even though how small Mars is, you can capture the tallest volcano or the largest volcano in the solar system. Okay, so that's Mars. So we were able to get Mars and Saturn. And Jupiter. I have to make sure that my Jupiter is Jupiter recording, whatever. 65. Yeah. Any other questions?
Let's have a look. Oh, can you zoom into Mars and make it a little bit more visible? Oh, we haven't done the processing part of it in Photoshop, have we?
No.
Okay. I don't want to jump ahead too far.
Okay. Let's go to Mars. Really, there's nothing really much you can do about Mars right now. You'll have to wait for later this year. For me, there's really no point in zooming in. So this is what Mars looks like. This is tiny. You can zoom in, but yeah, this is the best you can do. Remember, Mars is just, let's see, how big is Mars now? So the size of Mars right now is how many arcs? 3.6 arc second.
Which is actually quite small.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the hardware that you're using. I mean, it's great using the camera.
No. Excuse me. It's 6.6 arc second. Sorry, 6.6 arc second. The size of Mars now. Yeah, you were saying.
Oh yeah, sorry. Hardware. A lot of people ask me this. In fact, so it's not just this one person.
Mm.
When you're picking hardware, and I don't mean the camera and the telescope, I'm talking about the laptop, the computer, all of these things. And I noticed that you have a lot of software running in the background that shows like CPU usage and things like that. When you're choosing physical hardware, what do you look for in a PC or a Mac? I mean, probably more PC than a Mac.
First of all, I make sure it has a USB 3.
Yeah, that's an
Yeah,
obvious one.
that's an obvious one. And the second one, uh, because normally I don't buy uh, basically. Well, I normally buy laptops at basics and just upgrade it. Like I buy a laptop with 8 gig of RAM and upgrade it to 16 gig of RAM. Even if I can get 32, I'll probably upgrade to 32 in the future. In this case, initially this was an i5 CPU. This is an Ivy Bridge laptop, and what I did was, I think 2 years ago, I bought a quad core i7. This is a 3740 chip QM quad core chip. So I basically took this laptop apart and just switched to CPU. So for processing, for image capture, I think a dual core would do just fine as long as you don't have anything working in the background. If you can get a quad core, it's also good. But the problem with quad core, it's basically battery intensive and it can get very hot. So for imaging, that'll be good. A dual core i7 would be good. If you can get a quad core, then it'll be better. But memory is very important. At least 8 gig, better 16 or 32. For the desktop, get as fast as you want. Get one of those, uh, thread thread rippers.
Yeah, the AMD Threadrippers. I mean, they are actually. Here's the funny thing.
Mm.
For best bang for your buck, AMD probably produce some of the best processors for bang for buck. I mean, look at them as the Newtonian
Yeah.
reflector of the
Yes.
CPU world. I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean,
Mm. Yeah.
go ahead.
It's the best. AMD is the best. And if Threadripper is too much for you, you can just get a Ryzen. For me, Intel is way too overpriced. But without the new AMD, the Intel would have been even more expensive. So it's nice to have competition.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, of course.
yeah. In my desktop right now, I'm using a Haswell i7 4770K. I haven't really upgraded my CPU. For my images, I think it'll take I think a minute per frame to process in AutoStacker. So yeah, for computers, there's a lot of choices. Make sure that you get a tough laptop. Don't buy those cheap laptops because when you're handling it outside, those cheap laptops are gonna fall apart. I would highly recommend the ThinkPads. Before I used to have a Toshiba, but what happened was that the hinge cracked. Uh, right now, I've been using uh, ThinkPads for. This is a six year old ThinkPad, and for me, it's still very powerful. One thing very important is to have a solid state drive. Um, in my case, I had to do some surgery with this one because I still have a physical hard drive for planetary imaging because I think hard drives are, one problem with SSD, especially if your SSD is not big, is it's the wear. Uh, SSDs, although they're very fast, they degrade with the number of writes that you do on them. So it has only a limited number of writes. Some SSDs, especially the the 3D, is it the TLC?
Hmm.
The TLCs, they're limited to I think 100 writes per cell. So I think, yeah, more or less. And I think the MLCs are the one that can do I think a few thousand writes per cell. Uh, So make sure that if you have an SSD, a SSD, it's big, so it can spread out the writes, so it will not wear. If not, just have a physical hard drive. And older laptops, they have MSATA. You can, like in my case, you can just plug in an MSATA drive, or the newer laptops have M.2 interfaces, so you can buy those SSDs M.2 and have a physical hard drive, hard HHD, a big, let's say 1 gig or 2 gig hard drive for your planetary data. When you're doing solar or lunar imaging, uh, especially when you're imaging eclipses, it's good. You write everything on the SSD because the HD cannot catch up.
So do you recommend using the internal or the external drives? I mean, if you're using external, of
No,
course,
no, 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 no external, because you're gonna fight the bandwidth of your of the camera. Remember, you may have three USB 3 ports, but they only have one controller, and they only have one channel that feeds to the CPU and to the memory, or to other parts. You want to retain that bandwidth from the camera to the computer. If you're going to have a hard drive, it's going to split the bandwidth, so it's no use using, unless of course you use a firewire, or another interface that's not USB.
I
But
mean, there are actually I mean, I actually have one of these Asus gaming laptops that
mm,
have a separated USB 3 bus and a USB 2 bus. So I've actually got the luxury of
mm,
using external SSD drives, but I noticed that I can only use one specific port on on my laptop, because I know that
mm,
port has its own controller. So,
mm,
and this goes to say is
mm.
USB hubs are actually one of the worst things you can possibly
No, no,
use
no, no.
in situations like that. If you can get rid of that USB hub, I highly suggest not to use those things. It's fine when you're doing nighttime imaging, like long exposures, because you're only dumping the file as and when it comes down. But when you're doing continuous data transfer like this, USB hubs just wreak
Mm,
havoc on
mm.
everything.
And the worst part is, if you're saving on USB 2 and accepting data on USB 3, the hard drive's going to choke.
Right, totally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So make sure everything is internal, because you want to access the north. Is it the north bridge or the south bridge
Um,
directly? Mm.
oh, actually, there is no North Bridge, South Bridge anymore now. With
Uh,
some of the modern chipsets, they kind
yeah.
of done away with all of that. I
Okay.
know that sounds weird, because I got to admit, I've been into like computer hardware
Mm,
from the get go, right all the way back since a 286 and a 386. So
mm,
North Bridge, South Bridge doesn't mean anything by today's standard. Um,
okay.
this is actually a good time to do a plug. So, what do I recommend? I mean, obviously, Chris recommends the IBM laptops and things like that, but strangely enough, I have a Primalucci Labs Eagle computer. I actually love using these things, and I actually still use the old version, the Eagle Observatory, which is the first generation. They're now
Mm,
up to the Eagle 3. You can totally use one of these guys for doing any of your astronomy imaging, even solar, up to a certain extent. It depends on your camera, obviously. The beautiful thing about it is what he's gone and done is essentially taken the power of a desktop and has put it inside of a small form factor. Again, you still have those limitations with the bus, with the USB bus being shared across the entire system. But when you have everything in one easy to use box, the fun thing I do is I set my telescope up, I put everything in there, I plug in my Ethernet, and I just run back indoors, and then I can sit happily and do my imaging and just be out of the sun or be out of the cold. So, Chris,
yeah. Any
how are
other
you feeling?
questions?
No,
Happy. I'm very happy with Saturn. Look at that.
I mean, you guys have to understand. It's Chris does this mainly for the science behind it. I mean, he does do the pretty pictures, but you got to remember he does the science first at the end of the day. So, any last words, Chris, before we close this?
Yeah, guys. Yeah, as I always. Oh, by the way, can you switch to the laptop? I'll show them the jet stream.
Oh, yeah. The laptop. Hold on. Which one is the laptop?
The one with the camera.
The one with
Here.
the camera. Well, that narrows it down. Oh, it's this one.
Okay.
Is it this one?
I'm still having a screen here.
Oh, no, wrong one.
Oh.
Must be this one.
That is one.
Which one am I controlling? Am I controlling the right one? Because it's really hard for me to tell. Oh, is this your desktop? Oh no, that's the home PC. Oops.
Yeah, yeah, the other one, the one with my image here.
One with your image. How come I don't have control over this? Can you click on share screen?
Where's that? Where's that?
It's on the Zoom meeting.
Your go home screen. How do I change view options? How do I change screen?
Oh, hold on. So it's this machine that we're controlling, right?
Okay.
So I should be able to share screen. Oh, it's because we have to turn off the other one. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
So we need to. I'm just going to disconnect the other one for a second.
Okay.
Hopefully we don't lose you. Oh gosh, it's a big picture of me. Okay. We have the screen share. No, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why this won't allow me to share the screen. Share. Ah, there we go. That was a fight.
So this is the website. You can see where the jet stream is. So I'm over here. So we don't know what jet stream is. So I'm located over here. You can see the jet stream going over Japan and here through Mexico and here in Australia and South America. So this is the jet stream picture right now.
Is this normal for you guys in general, even throughout the year? I mean, that's actually quite remarkable considering the US is.
There's no jet stream on the equator, period.
So there you have it, folks. Move to anywhere in the equator and you're going to have the best imaging. I guess that's actually probably why they have a lot of these telescopes in South America, because there is no jet stream.
There is in South America. In fact, I remember before there was this famous imager who went to Panama to do planetary imaging.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the name, but there was this planetary astronomer that went to Panama to do Jupiter, these things, and that's the reason. Basically, right now, I think California is out of the jet stream right now, right?
Let me have a look at our jet stream map real fast.
Oh, this is a forecast.
I'm just going to post a link to everybody who is interested here in the US. This is the jet stream map that I look at specifically. No, there's quite a horrible jet stream over our heads right now.
Okay. Oh, this is it's a 3-day forecast. So I think later on this week you'll have later this week.
Yeah, later on in the week we're supposed to have a good, a relatively good nights, but even here in California right now, we've got this horrible cold front being pulled down because of the jet stream. I mean, it's coming from the Arctic, coming down,
Mm.
and then coming back up into California, and it's this is unseasonal for us. This is not normal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right now, nothing
Mm.
in the world is normal.
Well, actually, the skies are clear now. There's no pollution.
Well, yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, transparency is a lot better
Mm,
than what it
yeah,
usually is.
yeah. Well, one final word that I have to say is that the bottom line is not pretty pictures, but the scientific value of your images.
Mhm.
I remember a few years ago, there was this guy in Iran who took an image of Saturn around that time where you had that dragon storm. I wonder if you remember that. There was this huge storm on which appeared on Saturn, and he was the first one to image it. So his image wasn't that great, but it had a huge scientific value because it showed invisible light when Cassini wasn't looking at Saturn, what that storm looked like.
Right,
Uh, so in many cases, you can discover impacts, even features of Jupiter and Saturn by just going out there and image. So don't get discouraged. Even I would post images that are blurry, that are horrible, as long as I see that there is scientific value on it. So it doesn't mean that you just have to have very beautiful image for it to have scientific value. So
cool.
that's why I would encourage everyone to go out and image. And right now, there's Juno that you can support. Juno is out there in Jupiter. Hopefully, it will be there in the next 2 to 3 years, as we're gonna have an extended mission.
Right,
And one thing about Juno is that it can only do a very high resolution pickup on Jupiter, and which means that the professional astronomers would really appreciate the amateur images. In fact, not just appreciate, they require our images to have a big picture of Jupiter, so they will see what's going on Jupiter.
right, right.
Uh, so that it's very important. And as a plug-in, this Friday, April 10 is PJ, I think 36. So perijove, which means that Juno is again going to plunge to uh, to Jupiter. And to give you an idea, actually, the image that we took yesterday will show actually shows the region that Juno is uh, going to observe. Okay, here it is. So this is the region. If you look at my mouse key, or the you see this path that I'm trying to make. So
Mhm.
this is the path that Juno will try to image. So the professional astronomers right now are they're demanding images like these to see what their targets will be.
Gotcha.
So
For the people who are at home, how do we submit our data, or do they just find it themselves?
no here it is. This is the website, Mission Juno. That s
Uh-oh.
oh, it's offline. Come on, guys. Here you
Oh,
go.
there we go.
So this is the website of Mission Juno. One thing interesting is that you need to log in and sign up for an account here, so you can basically contribute to this website. So
Now,
uh,
just for you guys at home to understand, it doesn't matter if you're an amateur or a pro at any particular level. You don't have to be as good as Chris in processing on all that stuff. Any and all data to them is still valuable, and you can actually make a difference by submitting your scientific data. The only thing that is important is that you have the correct timestamps so they can reference it. So if you just send a blank image and say, I took this picture of Jupiter last night, well, they're going to say, well, that's great, but we need a time. So you do
actually,
have to follow some of the
mm,
science data
mm,
that goes with it.
wait a sec. That's why the WinJu posting was so important. because you don't actually need to save the the or print the
Timestamp,
date
yeah.
and time. You don't need that. You need it on the file name,
Right.
because this website actually is programmed for WinJupos. If you save your file with a WinJupos file format, it will save everything. It will indicate the time automatically. You don't have to enter the date and time anymore. So you can just upload easily on this website. And by the way, the one who made this website is the same company that does websites for Taylor Swift.
Oh, wow. There we go. All right, guys. So we're going to cut this now. We are pretty much done. As a bonus to you guys who are still watching, I'm going to actually play one of my tutorials for you guys on solar image processing. Normally it's buried behind a payment wall, but I'm going to put it up for free. This will become available on YouTube afterwards once we actually get everything separated and cut down into bite-sized chunks, for lack of a better description. So once again, Chris, thank you very much. It's been a long 3 days, and it feels like that you have been living in my office for the last 3 days. So any last words?
Hey, just keep on imaging, and I hope you guys have good skies and good seeing.
Excellent. All right, then. So we're going to cut over to my tutorial. Again, this will be made available for everybody. But other than that, thank you very much for coming along for this 3-day event. It's been a pretty long weekend, and I'm sure you guys are absolutely exhausted by now. I'm probably bursting to go to the bathroom because I know I am. So again, thank you very much. If you want any more information about any of the products that you see or any of the things that we've been talking about, you can visit our website, telescopes.net, or you can give us a call on toll-free 888-427-8766. My name is Simon. I am the stupid astronomer because I do the stupid things so you don't have to.